Listeners, welcome to Tales of Abundance. Uh, John, take us into this article from Chamath. I can't say his last name from in this X article.
Yeah, I love talking about AI and technology with you guys. I think you have this great article, The Collapse of Terminal Value and What Happens if AI Makes Every Moat Temporary, which is a little bit clickbaity. And it talks about the collapse of terminal value. And then it goes into, how AI is going to have us repricing terminal value, and it's true. I think it will have us replacing terminal value in some industries, and then it goes like newspapers in one period, and retail, and Uber, and energy, and taxi medallions. And the reality is that AI is going to have us repricing things. We're already seeing some of that in the market, but it's not going to reprice everything all at once, and I think that technology does disrupt things, and it's talking, this article makes it sound like we've never had technology disruption ever before in the history of mankind. But in the 1890s, the head of the United States Trademark and Patent Office said we should shut the US PTO down because everything that ever could have been invented has already been invented. That was before planes, before the microwave, before space travel, before the internet, before AI. It might have been before toaster ovens. I don't know. But like, I mean, I mean, when we have these like all or nothing things that are in the titles of these articles, it's a little clickbaity for me. I think it's real that people should be thoughtful about terminal value and how you look at pricing technologies. I think it's smart to think about where disruption lives, but it's ridiculous to think that like the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket all at once because of two letters. Like it's fear mongering in my world. It's not abundant.
I agree with you that it's a little clickbaity because when you get to the end of the article, his actual conclusion is this isn't going to happen. But my take on this article is a little different than yours. I have issue with it for a different reason than you. I took his main point as what impact is this going to have on the stock market, on the S&P, on the Nasdaq, right? I mean, one of his main things that he really digs into here, and I think he does a really good job, is he talks about how the market is a multiple, not just of cash flow now, but what do you expect over the next 25 years, and the
Sure.
growth, and that all of that is dependent upon a moat. And what he's really saying is if AI takes over this market and it removes the moat, how can you value companies at 25 years earnings, right? Which I think is too much anyway. But to take his argument a step further, what is the world going to look like in 25 years? I don't know how to be, I don't think anybody knows how to begin to answer that,
Well,
right?
that's not, stop. That's not true. Porter's five forces is the key of strategy in an industry. And Porter's been talking about his five forces for decades now. And it's like threat of substitution changes profitability of an industry, buyer power changes profitability of an industry, supplier power changes profitability of an industry, competitive rivalry changes profitability, barriers to entry change. Like this is not a new set of concepts. Anybody who's ever taken a strategy class that's talked about Porter's five forces has talked about technology's impact in all five of these areas. So to say it like this is a come on, like that's just, it's not
It,
intellectually honest. Well, I'm not saying that this isn't going to disrupt people. I'm not saying that it's not going to have a negative impact in some places, but like the printing press wiped out everybody who was a scribe in the 1400s. Like we don't have a job description today where you sit down with a pen and a quill and you copy books over and over and over again so that we have copies of books for libraries. Like the printing press wiped out that entire industry globally. Randy, to your point, I think 25 times, earnings is really expensive, but historically typical.
mm, Historically, it's more like 7 to 9. And
Oh, okay.
25 is on the really high end.
Different periods of history. I love that. So so I like your time arc better than mine. That's great.
But historically, 7 to 9 is the norm, right? And I think so. To make Chamath's point, I haven't even got to where I disagree with it, but to make his point, if historically it's more like 7 to 9 times earnings and it's currently 25 times earnings, if you go back 50 years, it was a whole lot easier to predict 25 years in the future or 7 years or whatever the time frame is. Now, figuring out what's going to get disrupted, I mean, John, you just told me a few weeks ago you had a call and you go, "Yeah, I just got off the phone with somebody and they made a Bloomberg terminal in 15 minutes with AI." Like that wasn't an option 6 months or a year ago. By the way,
Right.
I've heard that same story now from three different people, one on a podcast, two in person, that said they recreated a Bloomberg terminal or did it and added something. I've heard numerous people going like, well, do I use software or do I make my own CRM or have AI create my own CRM? Like this is happening at a really, really fast pace. So we're already the market is overvalued if you look at it historically, and he's arguing that it probably shouldn't be even 7 to 9 anymore. It probably should be 2 to 5, and so what he's saying is going to happen then is that if the market drops, the money that will be invested into startups, including AI and some of these other things, will slow down, and therefore AI actually won't scale as fast as we think it'll scale because the money will dry up and then it'll swing back the other way and it'll go back and forth, is kind of what he's arguing. Where I disagree with him is he doesn't play this out, right? I'm always thinking second, third, fourth level. Well, if AI really does all these things, right, and it makes it where a company you can't predict earnings 25 years in advance or even 5 years in advance, that means that the moat to creating all of these things has gone down and down and down, but that means way more abundance. That means that people can make whatever it is easier, and abundance comes from supply. It does not come from demand, right? And that if we can make more and it becomes easier to mine materials and it becomes easier to get energy and it becomes easier, easier, easier in every which way, and we have humanoid robots and all these things, well, there isn't going to need to be as much money and everything will become cheaper. And yes, the really rich people might watch their net worth drop, and they won't need nearly as much net worth because everything is going to become cheap and abundant if this naturally play if what he's saying plays out. It's exactly what Elon Musk has been predicting, is talking about how money will become almost irrelevant, right?
Yeah, I
So
just that's the part where I think we've talked about that with the Industrial Revolution. I just don't know if that, I mean, maybe that's a possibility. I think the likelihood is probably not as probable as people think. Another thing just to be concerned about, like we talk about AI and the more availability of everything, the thing that's not getting as much airtime is, a shrinking population, so shrinking demand. So if you both increase supply and you reduce demand, I mean,
let's, John, I know you don't necessarily buy into the concept, and I don't fully either, but let's assume he's right. And let's say the stock market drops from 25 times earnings. Doesn't matter if it's 2, 5, 7. That's a lot of wealth destruction, right? So, how does somebody protect themselves? Like, what is the answer of how they protect themselves? I know what I think it is, but I want to know what you guys think.
I am the same way. I think hard assets, including real estate, I think you have to be disciplined in how you buy real estate. We saw that whole cycle in Detroit where there was kind of an implosion and then a renaissance. And so I think that, and especially if you have a shrinking population, the way you buy real estate changes quite certainly. So I think the type of real estate matters. I think where you buy the real estate, the location matters. And I think doing something where you are an intelligent investor. I think for me, I went and took all the real estate courses I could. I took 8 years to study the market before I bought my first, piece of real estate. I'm not suggesting everyone should do that, but I just wanted to be well informed before I started investing in real estate if I was going to make a sizable investment. And so that was the approach that I took. And so I think investing in what you know, also very, very important. And I had a friend who's in private equity say recently that generalists in the next kind of are going to be hurt as you move forward, and people who are real experts and invest in areas of expertise are going to have a benefit.
Yeah, I think real estate also is impacted by the technology, right? If we have flying cars, which people are predicting, and there's already the companies, we talked about it last week, it becomes much easier to get the beautiful scenery 30 miles out of town or 60 miles out of town because of the commute or on the other side of the mountain or whatever. So I do think technology impacts it. I think gold is good, although if we really have that much abundance, there's a whole bunch of gold that with the right robots and technology, if the price goes high enough, they can go to the bottom of the ocean, or eventually they'll be able to figure out how to mine asteroids, et cetera. It's not as limited. So for me, of course, it's Bitcoin is the answer because it is limited to 21 million. The other thing I was thinking about with this is companies that really make something, right? Intellect is going away and knowledge is being disrupted by AI to some extent. I do think being an expert in something is not being disrupted, but general knowledge is going away. But if you make something that is needed, or you mine something, or energy, I mean, a lot of those different things are probably going to hold value and become more valuable over time. So.
That's right.
All right, listeners, we're going to go to break. When we get back, we have a very special guest, Jeffery Feldberg, is going to talk about a lot of things with abundance and really kind of building on some of what we just talked about, how to exit his company with a 9-figure exit, and some just a lot of wisdom and a lot of tips. I think y'all are really going to enjoy this one.
Here at Tales of Abundance, we know that fitness is just as important as money or milestones. It's one of our key 5 F's for lots of us. Taking care of my body while I build my life is one of the more time-consuming and difficult goals to chase. That's why we're partnering with AG1. It's a daily drinkable habit. Less than a minute, that's formulated with 75 plus vitamins and nutrients and designed to support energy, digestion, and immune defense. It even has a few grams of protein that we're all chasing these days. And if you want to try it with our affiliate link, you'll also receive a free AG1 flavor sampler, plus vitamin D3 plus K2 with your welcome kit when you first subscribe, a $72 value. Go to shop.drinkag1.com/tales.
Okay, welcome back from the break. Today we've got Jeffery Feldberg. Jeffery, welcome to Tales of Abundance. I'm excited to have you here.
Hey, John, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Delighted.
We met on your podcast, Deep Wealth, with your Deep Wealth Nation, with your audience, and I'm so interested and inspired by the stories that you tell. And you're pretty public about turning down a 7-figure exit and turning it into a 9-figure exit. Let's start with just the story of EmbaNet and how you ended up with was it your first exit?
EmbaNet's a really interesting story. And John, thank you. And by the way, great to have you on the podcast. And you're quite modest yourself. Congratulations with you and Anthony and Randy and what you guys are doing now and all of your successes. Looking back now, you can always connect the dots. But back in the day, it was anything but that. EmbaNet, in many ways, it's like that story that probably so many people and in your community have likely heard about the Bumblebee. On paper, the bumblebee should never fly. Scientists have said, well, the weight is too much, the wingspan is too small. The only problem is no one ever told the bumblebee. And it flies. And EmbaNet is much the same way. On paper, it never should have worked. Here I was, no money, I had no experience, no team. I was in, for me, a new industry. This thing called the internet. I don't know if you guys heard about the internet. It's a small little thing that was up and coming back in the day. But we were up against some really large, well-backed competitors. But it was early days when we first started, and the internet was brand new. It was dial-up modems. I'm going to date myself here somewhat.
I mean, when you say brand new, by the way, people think like 2000. This is like 1995, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could hear the internet with that screeching sound on the phones. It was, some of us remember that.
And, for those out there, again, I'm dating myself. Think America Online and CompuServe. And that, going back to those days, it was nowhere like what it is today with the internet. But that was it. And, what was interesting about EmbaNet was it started in my MBA program. So EmbaNet originally stood for Electronic MBA Network. And when I began it, I had no idea this is what I was going to be doing. It was for selfish reasons, quite openly. I started my MBA program. And for those that are watching this, I used to have a whole lot more hair. My hair used to be like this, but I started my MBA program. I lost most of it from the stress. This is in the first semester of the MBA program. And I said, gosh, there's got to be a better way of doing this. We were meeting on the weekends and the weeknights and the weekdays and driving to these meetings. I said, this is crazy. Let's find a better way. And experimented. I found a better way. It worked so well for my team, my group. We became the top group in the program. and saving time. And it was, if I can use a couple of E words, effortlessness and with ease. I felt guilty. And I said, okay, this can't be just for us. Let me introduce it to the rest of the class. And little did I know that that class project would later go on to become EmbaNet, which later would go on to create a market disruption. And depending on where you want to go, John, we can delve into what it did and all those other things. But it really started off as, okay, how can I solve this problem for myself and my group to make things easier?
When you've been pretty public about, you were offered something like 3 times EBITDA at the first turn, and then you decided to disrupt yourself instead and ended up selling for 13 times EBITDA, I found online. And so, I mean, and the disruption, this is the part that really grabbed me online, was that your disruption, you tried to disrupt your own business model in 1999, right as we were about to go through a dot-com bust, and then you had massive success. Like, tell us that, like, take us into 1999, take us into the mindset, take us into that first offer, tell us where it was in the process, and then how did you walk through that arc?
It was a dark and stormy night. Seriously, just let me set up the context to put this in perspective. So, started out of my parents' attic, no money, no experience, no team, and it was, okay, if this worked well in my MBA program, let me take this to other MBA programs. And the whole idea was for other MBA programs, for both the faculty and the students, whether it was a full-time or executive MBA student. Today we take it for granted, we call it e-learning. Back then, that didn't exist. And so it was be able to save some time and go through the MBA program and save a whole lot of time. Our claim to fame, we became the golden child in the industry. Most online programs, think about this, you're in business, and out of every 10 customers, you're losing 6 or 7 of them. That was online learning. So EmbaNet came along and said, hey, we're going to do your hosting, so we'll take care of the servers, we'll do 24/7 live technical support, we'll help bring the courses online so it's not just a boring talking head, it's actually dynamic and interesting, and that's what got us going. And so initially it was very small, again, out of my parents' attic, and eventually my dad was a pharmacist, and he was on the board of directors, he had ownership in the building. I said, hey, Dad, do you think I wanted a doctor's office because I had worked in my dad's pharmacy growing up as a kid. There were some vacancies. Do you think I can get a doctor's office month to month? It was, I think, $500 a month at the time. Can you speak to the board? Maybe they can do us a favor. I said, okay, I spoke to the board, but Jeffrey, sure, but it's literally month to month. They can give you a month's notice and you're out. So anyways, we're in the doctor's office. It's now very humble EmbaNet, and we're starting to grow. We got the attention of a Fortune 10 company who knocked on the door, and they initially came along, oh, let's do a joint venture and this could be interesting. And I had a feeling this was more than just a joint venture. But I said, hey, you know what? I don't know what I don't know. Let's go along with this. Where's it going to go? Who knows? They'll pick out some of our blind spots. And very long story short, they ended up giving a 7-figure offer. And friends and family, hey, Jeffrey and team, take it. This won't come along again. Grab it. You'll do something else. You're still young. But to everyone's surprise, I said no. And I don't know who felt worse, the buyer or my family, but said no to that. And I had learned from that process of, okay, wow, I just didn't know what I didn't know. I was this founder and all hands on deck and let's just get this going. But I saw through the process, okay, yeah, the buyer was that proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing and looking to get a real deal there. But, you know, what's that old saying? When you point some fingers, you got 4 pointing right back at you. And I said, okay, I did not help that 7-figure offer situation. Let me learn from this. And so I took those learnings myself, my business partners, Steve Wells and Will Escalazzo, and created a system that less than 24 months later, we were able to have a 9-figure exit deal. And we really got our start from saying no to a 7-figure offer. And what was going on at that time, John, as we were going through that process, it was, my goodness, the .com or .bomb was right upon us. And one quick story I'll share with you. I'll never forget. I was at a trade show, and we had all these companies, no business model, no revenues, just these ideas. And they were selling for gazillions of dollars. And one of these startups approached me and said, Jeffrey, you're a dinosaur. You're just not going to be here. We're going to put you out of business. And I said, oh, how's that? Well, this founder said, we're charging nothing and you're charging something. Why would anyone want to use you? And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? But what was interesting for myself and for your listeners is I stuck to best practices, to first principles. And I said, okay, well, maybe they'll put us out of business, but if they're going to put us out of business, it's not going to be without a fight. And so for me, it was never about market share or how big of a business. I only had one concern. And this is because I was bootstrapping. I want to be the most profitable business. I'll take a smaller business as long as it's profitable. And ultimately, history and looking back, hindsight is always 2020. That was the right approach because we had a really terrific business. It wasn't just a terrific business model. It was an excellent business model. We can talk about that at one point if you like. It was a great business model. We were profitable. We were making a difference. It was a real business with real customers, tier one universities, Vanderbilt University, Boston University.
So Jeffrey, was that 24 months? Is that when you changed everything?
It was already in the works when the seven-figure offer came. We were already in that inflection point, and we knew something was off and that we had to change. So another way to look at it is that we were terrific at keeping the seats filled. It was actually John Clark, the associate dean at Colorado State University, calls me up one day, Jeffrey, I have a board of directors meeting. And it's not great. There's this thing called the internet, and now video conferencing, and now my competitors are setting up in town for my executive MBA program. I'm going to have a whole lot less students for myself and for you. Can you help me fill the seats? And had no idea, Randy and Anthony, John filling the seats, marketing, had no idea what that was. Obviously, we knew how to market. It was for ourselves, but that's really what began our journey to create a market disruption of, okay, we're great at keeping the seats filled. How do you fill the seats? And that led to a new business model, a new way of doing business, and ultimately that's what led to the market disruption. And what's interesting, all you founders out there who want abundance, as I like to say, in today's success are tomorrow seeds of failure. And what do you mean by that? Well, had EmbaNet, and I'd like to go back to EmbaNet 1, which is what we began with, and EmbaNet 2, it would have been very comfortable and very easy to stick with EmbaNet 1 and not look to fill the seats. Had we done that, though, what would have happened? Technology became easier. The schools were catching up. The IT departments would have gone to our customers and said, look, maybe we're not as good as EmbaNet, but good is good enough. And we now got the technology down. The servers aren't going down as much, and the software's become easier. We can do all that for you. Why don't you come on board with us? By the time they did that, the schools were like, well, yeah, that's all fine and good, but are you going to get me my students? Because we've 10 times, 30 times the number of students that we have in our online programs, and they're just not any students. They are as good, even better than our on-campus students. And so that's really behind the scenes what we were figuring out and failing a lot. If you think this was a straight path, it was anything but. It was one step forward, 5 steps back, 2 steps forward, 7 steps back, but figuring out along the way to really make the difference. And so ultimately, it was we kept the seats filled, but we also filled the seats, and we did so in a very novel way of doing this from a business model perspective that gained a lot of traction and worked really well.
I mean, it's super early solution selling where you were giving someone the entire box versus just a point solution or a SaaS solution. And I think for the the listeners that weren't doing business in that time period, like 95 to 2005, you were still running data centers and maybe even had a data center locally, and co-location was a really big problem. And I remember we had a fire at a data center at that period, and we were co-located in multiple geographies, but like we had some real latency problems when that fire took down a data center for a few hours. And there was a lot of challenges you don't have to worry about today with things like AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, and just a different set of problems than we have right now.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Having lived through that, the other, not only was technology changing, but I think it was around 2002 or so, the investment dollars dried up, right? Because so many companies went belly up that everyone ran for the hills. And so the some of the startups that probably had promise, they went down in flames because they couldn't get investment dollars from the guys on the West Coast anymore. So there was a lot going on. I mean, it was a very turbulent time from '02 to '05, and then obviously, other things occurred in '08 and '09. So, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Jeff,
Anthony,
what
go ahead.
what years when you talk about the seven-figure exit and the nine-figure exit, just to help me get my head around it, like what were the time frames or what years were those?
Sure. So the exit, and could be easily a whole other episode. The exit was in 2007. It was
Okay.
2 weeks before the Great Recession began in the bond market. So, in
Okay.
other
Great
words,
timing.
had the exit been pushed forward, say 2, 3 weeks, it would not have happened. It just would have blown up because the buyer was financing the deal through bonds. And so that was the timing of when the exit was. And so it was like 2004, 2005, somewhere in around there when the seven-figure offer came. And Anthony, to your point, I mean, since we're talking about abundance, it's really an important, at least for me, looking back, and a strategy that I've tended to follow. I've made a lot of mistakes. Thankfully, they were much earlier on, even before EmbaNet. I could tell you the stories of when I was greedy. I wanted to be rich for the sake of being rich, and that blew up in flames. One of the reasons why I believe EmbaNet worked, when everyone around us said, you guys are crazy and it's nuts and you can't do this, it was a passion. Myself, the team, we were chasing our passion first and not the dollars. And in my experience, when I chase the dollars first, the dollars don't usually happen. But when I chase the passion first, no guarantees. When I can do it right, though, the dollars will follow. And so we stuck to our beliefs. It was a passion for us, and we were on a mission. It wasn't just about the money. In fact, the money was further down on the list. And quite openly, we just wanted to be that game changer, be that change maker for the faculty, the students, the graduates that ultimately we were serving. And that's really what helped get us through some very turbulent times. Some people may disagree with me. They're not wrong to disagree with me. We were bootstrapped as well. And so in a lot of ways, that helped to insulate us. We didn't take the easy money very deliberately on that. It just wasn't our ethos. And we said, okay, a dollar earned is a dollar kept. We're going to reinvest that in the business. And yes, we're going to grow slower. That said, though, we will have the control. We'll do it our way with our vision and our kind of quality.
Yeah,
Where
that really hits home with me personally. I spent 39 years in corporate America, stepping on everybody I could step on to climb corporate ladders. And at the age of 60, was able to become an entrepreneur. And the difference in mindset in terms of now I'm doing something I like to do. I'm not necessarily good at it yet, but I'm going to work really hard at it to get good at it. And it led to what it led to. But it's such a shift in mindset. And if the listeners, if you're not liking what you're doing, no matter how good you are at something, you aren't going to be happy, no matter how much wealth you, dollars and cents. I mean, I made plenty of money in corporate America. I lived a really great life. I was never happy, never happy, and I wasn't a real good person either. That environment creates, some bad habits. We'll just call them bad habits and bad actions. So yeah, it really hits home, and you can see the passion you have in terms of you knew you had something, you were liking what you were doing, and maybe it was going to be successful, maybe it wasn't, but you weren't going to give up.
You're exactly right. And Anthony, as you're talking about that, actually, on my podcast with John, we spoke about this as well. If you really want to see what someone is like, take away all the money or give them a lot of money. And I've been on both sides of that. And on my side, post exit, so think about this for a second. Jeffrey now has the experience. He has the zeros in the bank. He has the team. I was not a nice person. I had a huge ego. That's when I made a lot of my mistakes. There should have been abundance in my life. There was anything but that. I didn't feel that. And so just because you have zeros in the bank doesn't mean you have an abundant life. Sure, you can go and buy things and do things that last for a millisecond. And once the purchase is over, and I don't know, maybe it's a day or 3 days or a week, maybe a month if you're lucky, then for me anyways, it was that empty feeling again. And it's, as the saying goes, happiness is an inside job. Fulfillment's an inside job. You can't, at least for me, I couldn't fulfill it externally. And so it was a dark period in my life. I didn't have that happily ever after. And not having a purpose, having a lot of time and zeros in the bank,
Yeah.
it was not a great combination for me.
There's a lot of irony around that because, when you hang out with people that have lots of money, either through inheritance or earning it or whatever the case may be, it's easy to figure out when you have a lot of money that money doesn't make you happy. And you talk to people who maybe want more than they have, and they think that the money is the thing that will create the happiness, right? And so, and the comment is it's really easy to say when you have it that it doesn't make you happy, but the truth is that it's not the source of it, right? Like a life well lived is a happy life, and you can see that for me at least, when I've gone to other cultures and seen that it really isn't the money first, it's the other things first. And so, tell us about that. Like there was a point when you recognized that clearly, like the money didn't do it for me. So tell us about that moment and when it happened and how you got through it.
Yeah, it became a much longer story than I ever could have imagined or had wanted. And so post exit, day one, I'm pinching myself, was this real? Did this really happen? And it felt great to unplug, turn the phone off, not look at emails, not have phone calls. Truth is, I was burnt out. I was going at it 24/7 and had been at it for 13 years and needed that time to rest and recuperate. Once that was over, though, and lunch became the highlight of my day, it wasn't a great beginning for me because now I had the time and I landed in a group of, it was like a Norman Rockwell picture with the other people that I became friends with at that point in time. Successful on the surface, they had lots of time on their hands as well, and very well-to-do and successful people. I didn't see it at the time, or if I did, I didn't want to see it. There was really no spirituality, and today I'm a man of God, and John, you and I had spoken about that. God didn't exist for me back in those days, and it was the old saying, you are the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. And like that frog in boiling water, I began to change as a person. The people I was associating with, sure, incredible vacations and all the toys and these big houses and all the material trappings, yet inside there was an emptiness, and my values began to change. And I'll never forget, I have 2 daughters, and my eldest daughter, maybe she was 7 or 8, no more than 9 at the time. And one night she comes to me and says, "Daddy, are you going to be home tonight to do something with me? I have a question and I want to know if you're home tonight." And I said, "Honey, of course I'm going to be home. Why are you asking? What do you want to do?" And guys, truth be told, I'm ashamed, really embarrassed to say it. I didn't have plans to be home. And so I was lying to myself. And at the time, sure, I'll be home. I ended up saying to him, she said, "Well, Daddy, you haven't been home a lot lately like you used to be, and I wanted to watch a movie with you." And it crushed my heart. It just crushed me because when she was growing up, I wasn't there most of the time. I was traveling 6 months of the year, not back to back, but added up cumulatively 6 months of the year. And I promised myself, if there was ever an opportunity where I can be there for my daughter and then later my 2 daughters, I would be there. So after school or school events or whatever's going on in their lives, because I missed so much of that for the first number of years of her life. And I said, okay, something's not right here. And that was my wake-up call, that I began to look around, and I looked in the mirror. I did not like what I saw with a person that was looking right back at me. I said, okay, not needing to, I want to make some changes because I can see, I was at a fork in the road, I can see where this is going, and I don't like where it's going, and this is not who I am and not who I want to be. And for me, that was really the dark night of the soul of, okay, Jeffrey, make some changes now because you have a very small window here, otherwise you're going to lose it all.
Do you think you could tell that, like, abundance is about a lot more than money then? What would you have said to your kind of pre-exit self about wealth if you could go back and you could have listened as your younger self? Like for me, I could go back and talk to my younger self and I'd be like, yeah, my younger self wouldn't have listened. That was the place I was in.
Yeah, it would be. And again, I could only hope I would have listened. I'm not so sure I would have, but what I would be telling my younger self is it's true. Some of those colloquial sayings of the best things in life are free. And love can't solve all problems, but love is so much. And if on your first hand you can count the number of best friends that you have, you are a wealthy person. And if you're loved by your family, respected by your community, if God is at the center of your heart in all that you do, you are wealthy and have abundance beyond measure. because all the zeros in the bank, all the success, all the accolades, all the so-called accomplishments are absolutely nothing if you don't have the fulfillment and joy. So I had the first part, I had zero fulfillment, zero joy, and it was beginning to show up in my life. So I can only hope that the pre-exit Jeffrey would have listened and said, hey, okay, whoa, not so quick here, Jeffrey. Let's do a trial run here of Jeffrey without the business, because in my mind, I was the business was me. There was no separation. And this is, I'll speak for myself, I don't believe that I'm alone. Most founders are in this situation. In our 90-day mastery program, in fact, we talk a lot about that, of why we need to get the post-exit life now, even if your post-exit is 3-4 decades away. And it would be to build a life, God's at the center of my heart. My family, I'm there for them. I'm showing up with integrity, honesty. I have morality and doing my best, not just for me, but also for those around me, and being an example for my children. And as we're talking about this, you'll notice that money is not entering the conversation. And I'm not going to be ignorant and say, well, money doesn't do anything. Of course, money does things. For me, it's like a lubricant in life. It's like oil for the engine of the car. It can make life smoother. It can and does take some pressures off life. Absolutely. Does it bring in and usher the fulfillment and the happiness? At least for me, no, it doesn't, because for me, it became meaningless. Okay, I'm at this incredible 5-star hotel. What city am I in? Where am I again? Because they all look the same to me. And these restaurants, sure, they're great, but I forget about them the next day. And that really expensive bottle of wine that I had, which I no longer have alcohol, but that's a whole other story. You know, we all pee it out later on that day or the next day, and it's all but a distant memory with that. But I do remember that night my daughter asked me, Daddy, are you home tonight? I want to watch a movie with you, and you haven't been home for a while. Or those magic moments, as I call them, with my other daughter, with my family, or with close friends, my loved ones, those I do remember. And all too often, when even I look back, I was chasing that abundance in my mind. Okay, I got to become richer, I got to become bigger. I didn't have those abundant moments because I was burning the candle at both ends. My health was going by the wayside, and it was the wrong path in every which way.
Yeah, it sounds easy though to now as we're older to look back and say, that it isn't important. But what you were in an attic. I came from very modest means. At 0 to 60 time where you're earning your first paycheck and being able to afford an apartment and then a house on your own, the inflection point, no one's teaching the 20 something person who's now got a decent income, got a decent job, that now's the time to think about your future. Stop and be happy for a second and think about what's really going to make you happy for the rest of your life. And that's what's missing. If once you get on that train of earning money, more money seems like the best idea at the time. You're too immature to make those decisions. So I think about that, and I counsel my kids on this now, that here's what I didn't do right. I'm counseling a young guy who's got a business locally here who John will be happy to hear. I'm forcing him to establish his financial finish line so he knows where the hell he's going, as opposed to, like you said, working 24/7 and not paying attention to his daughter, and literally not paying attention to his daughter. So yeah, it's easy to say now, but boy, we can have an impact on people by teaching them those things.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're gonna. They're not gonna. Some of them aren't gonna listen at all. But maybe we can plant seeds that at some point they'll say, what John told me back, 7 years ago was the right thing. Let me act on that
It's
now.
hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, as you're talking about that, if I was a listener listening in and I was just getting going, what I would be saying is, sure, of course, all of you guys can say that. It's because you have some success now. You've experienced that, but you're not where I am, and you don't know what it's like, or you forget what it's like to make the mortgage or to pay the rent or to get the bills going or to build a life for yourself. And so for everyone listening in, you're absolutely right when you're saying that, because that's exactly what I was saying. Oh yeah, sure, you can say that, but you've already made it. So that's easy for you to say. Of course you're going to say it. You're a hypocrite in saying that. What I would share, though, is for everyone listening, this is where faith comes in of take it from us. We've been on this journey perhaps longer than you have, or if we've been the same amount of time, maybe we've taken it to a different trajectory. And take it on faith that focus on what really matters first. Get your house internally in order, and then everything else will follow along the way. And thankfully, my youngest daughter never had to go through what my oldest daughter went through because she always knew dad was always there and after school. And so I had fortunately learned, and my eldest daughter gave me that wake-up call, and I'm so glad that I listened to her and to myself to do that, that my youngest daughter was the benefactor of that. But for everyone listening, have some faith that what we're saying here, don't think it's a face value, good old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify, but why not try it for 7 days or 15 days, 30 days? Hey, let me put the right values first, and money is not at the top of the list.
I want to circle back to the building phase. And, I worked for a .com company during the boom and bust. And, it's collegeclub.com. We were supposed to go public. There was talk of the biggest IPO in history, blah, blah, blah. And we were supposed to go, I think it was spring of 2000, because of some, well, what I found out later were accounting discrepancies. We didn't go public. They had a different story that, they told even kind of top people. But I'm just thinking how different what you're talking about is than what I experienced or witnessed. So you talked about making money and charging, and for people that aren't old enough, that was the culture. The culture had nothing to do with making money, building revenue. It was how do you get users? How do you buy users? We raised $75 million overnight at one time from Sony, GM, and NBC, and they just spent it between then and the IPO instead, with no concept of making a real business. So my question is, with that context, and that was the culture, there was pressure, I think, industry-wide, but you saw a different route, right? Like, was that wisdom? Was that confidence? Was that being smarter? I mean, how did you do that when that was, I can't express to people that didn't live through it how against the stream that was. So how did you do that, or how did you find that wisdom?
Randy, great question. I remember one of my early mentors said, Jeffrey, I would choose to be both lucky and smart. If I can only have one, I choose luck over being smart. And so part of it was being lucky. I look back, I was very fortunate. Two of my role models, my mentors, were my father and my father's brother, my uncle. And sadly, both of these terrific men have passed away. Growing up, though, as a young boy, it was instilled in my mind, and because we're immigrant families, perhaps, Jeffrey, don't ever take loans. If you don't have it, you don't spend it. And if you're going to do something, make sure that you have not only the money in the bank to do it, but make sure that you have a backup to the money in case things don't work out. And so, Randy, to your point, I remember we were chastised in the industry. Oh, look at EmbaNet. They're old-fashioned. They don't have a burn rate. They're not buying up all these crazy big full-page ads in the paper and flying across the country doing all this and that. And people saw us as old-fashioned and out of style, and they're just not going to be around doing that. And there was an immense amount of pressure, even from the team. Well, look at what our competitors are doing. Why aren't we doing what they're doing? And Randy, just one quick story to share with you. When we go to a trade show, our competitors, I say this jokingly, not really though, they'd get the city block on the trade show floor. They'd have an entire row or column or area. I mean, it was massive what they had. And we had that one little table, and it was myself and my co-founders. We would be taking it and checking it in as luggage, the booth, and taking it out, assembling it ourselves, our competition at these massive booths that they were already having professional crews assemble it, and we were manning the booth. And when we eventually did have staff go, everyone was sharing rooms, including myself, to save the money. And so for us, the mindset was, hey, dollars saved means we can live another day. And it's, let's put our clients first. Well, the business has got to come first, but then the clients. And whatever we can do, let's live another day. And that was the tale of our story. Everything was live another day. Why would we get a hotel room for you or a hotel room for me? We can share a hotel room. The guys with the guys and the gals with the gals at that time when we had a bigger team that was going out. But why would we spend that money when we can save it and put that back into the business. Even the profits that we had, it was frustrating for me because no profits, and then you get some profits and you turn a corner. Wow, okay, we're starting to build a nice nest egg here, and guess what? The business has grown. You have to reinvest in the infrastructure. Well, you don't have to, but I want to reinvest in the infrastructure. Okay, there goes the profits. We're going to put this all into new equipment or new infrastructure or new facilities so the business can continue to grow. So it was a completely different life. And Randy, being open and honest, I at times wasn't sure if that would be the right way to go, and thinking, hey, maybe we do have this wrong. Maybe it should be what everyone else is doing, the burn rate and getting money. Thankfully, we stuck to the original vision of the bootstrapping. That's really what saved the day for us. In fact, I would, in closing on this topic, I would put one thing out there. Had we accepted, back in the day, venture capital, as it was called, today private equity, there likely would not have been a 9-figure exit. We probably would have imploded. We would not have been successful because, as I like to say, resilience trumps resources all day, every day. We had to be resilient. We didn't have the money to write the check. And even if we could, well, do we have to? Are there some other ways that we don't have to, that we can be smart about this and get it done in a more efficient? Yeah, maybe jumping through some hoops, but we can save some money along the way. And that was really the mindset and baked into the culture.
Yeah, they probably would have forced you into doing all those things. I mean,
Oh, yes.
I wish I would have worked there because ours was the exact opposite. Every time we got money, they couldn't wait to figure out how to spend it. I remember, I'd be back and forth to San Diego, and we had perfectly fine offices, and then all of a sudden, they had the top, I don't know how many floors of like one of the big tall buildings downtown with the roof and balconies, and
Yeah.
they were burning cash in a million different ways. Changing directions a little bit, I see a lot of similarities between the dot-com boom and bust and what's going on with AI right now. Not that we've hit a bust yet, but having lived through that and, exited from there, what similarities do you see, or maybe you don't see the similarities?
Wow, what a great question. And if I knew, I wouldn't be on this podcast right now to go be investing and profiting from that. I don't really know is the short answer with that. What's interesting is, and I don't want to put some names out there, let's just say one of the biggest names in AI that came up with this amazing model a year ago, and it was going to change forever the industry, and it did. They now shelved it, and they're now going to be looking at doing something else. Things are changing so rapidly that, to me, it goes back to a lot of what we're saying. There's so much uncertainty right now, and on the one hand, though, it's more than really ever easier to bootstrap now because of AI. I don't need to have the size of team, and I can do in a day what perhaps would have taken months or longer to do before that. It's really going back to what's the problem that I'm solving, and is it a painful enough problem that people are willing to gladly pay me to take that problem, that pain away for them? And I can help enough people do that first, and then help enough people over time, I can help myself. So it's interesting to see where AI is going. A lot of money to be made, a lot of money to be lost for sure, in terms of where things are. Where that all goes, your guess is as good as mine.
The cash is still cash, right? And I think you get people who are disciplined still know that cash is king in this particular environment, and it's helping quite a bit. So maybe we shift gears and say, okay, for the listener who's been here for the last 30 something minutes, 2 or 3 of the biggest mistakes that you see that may have happened in your historical past, or maybe you've counseled people through it, but are relevant today. Like, what are the 2 or 3 things I should be watching out for today as red flags, and what should I do instead?
Great question. So looking back, one of my biggest mistakes, and it came out in the exit, where I was too much the focal point, the center of control for the business. In part because I'm that adrenaline junkie. I love that control, and I love that, okay, Jeffrey's needed, he's going to come in and save the day, and I was able to do that. I never asked at what cost. It held the business back. It held people back in the business, and ultimately it wasn't a great recipe. By the time we brought in a terrific leadership team, they were just under a year, perhaps a little over a year in the seat when we were going through the liquidity event. And all of the investors and buyers came along and said, hey, this is a great team that you have, but come on, Jeffrey, you think we're born yesterday? We knew that you put them in place just for this. And as great as they are, they don't have the seat time that we're going to give you the credit for that. In fact, we're going to penalize you for that because we just don't know how they're going to handle themselves under pressure. Now, they probably did, but they're saying what they wanted to say because you can't really challenge that. So if you are a founder and you're the focal point of attention in your company, wow, think twice about that. The health for you is suffering, probably your family and loved ones, as well as the business. Fire yourself from the non-essential areas. Ask the question, okay, where do I not need to be? What don't I like doing? When do I walk away from an activity? I just feel so depleted, so drained. Those are the areas I like to say automate, delegate, or eliminate, and get out of that area so that you can focus on really what you want to do. You can be like that board of director role, or like the grandparent who's coming in. You have some grandchildren, you come in for the best of times and you leave it with the parents to do all the rest of the things. That to me was a huge mistake in terms of not doing that early enough in the company history. And
is there
then
anything you can't hold on before you move on? Is there anything you can't give up? Like, is there anything a founder definitely should never take their hand off of?
the short answer is yes, and it's a fine balance, and there may be some disagreement with what I'm about to share next. It's important to have that team in place and those hired guns, as they're called. Never take your eye off the cash in the bank and how the money is being spent. Be in control of that because it happened to me. It's happened to so many other founders and friends that have gone through this route. It's a similar story. Yeah, very profitable company, brought in the hired guns. They brought the corporate culture in. Nothing wrong with that, but I completely abdicated. I didn't delegate. They were doing what they wanted to do, and the profits go in the dumpster. And the company either stops existing, goes out of business, or has some major challenges ahead. So create that tight tension in a healthy way of how the money is being spent, not telling them of micromanaging, well, you spent $5 over here, why'd you do that? But to really have the right kind of KPIs that reward the behavior that you want to see. And for me, the right bonus system, the right KPIs that reward having the leadership team do what you want them to do without you having to say a thing, where they're coming to you, Jeffrey, give me some help here because I want to make my bonus and here's what's going on. Do you have any ideas of what we can do to pull this one out so I can make my bonus? And so to me, don't give up on how money is being spent. You may think, and oftentimes when I would bring in the hired guns, well, what do I know? I was never part of that world. They're smarter than me. They're better than me. Who am I to say, let them just do what they do? Well, actually, no. They can do what I can't do, but I can also do what they can't do. And that's what makes it a beautiful business relationship in terms of having that, I'll call it that harmony with that healthy tension back and forth and discussions and having not judgment, but having the data, the KPIs, the bonuses point in the direction of where we want this to go.
Jeffrey, that we have a lot of entrepreneurs, small business people that listen to the show, and I'm thinking a lot of them are hearing what you're saying. They're like, he's absolutely right, and I'm not going to do it because that person won't do it as well as me, right? And I think we've all had this conversation 100 times with people. So what do you tell that person to get over that belief system, fear, whatever you want to call it?
Well, sure. Do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? Do you want to be right or do you want to be living or dead? Because no one ever talks about the final exit. What's the final exit? Well, this is when we meet our maker. No one plans on it. We're all marching towards it. Thankfully, we don't know when that's going to be. It is somewhere out there. And when it's, okay, well, I'm the best. I can do this the quickest. Why should I pay someone to do it when I can do it far better than them? If you take a step back and you're really honest about it and you check the ego at the door, even if that person is only 70% as good, you know what? Good is good enough. And the difference is, whoever 70% is good, I'll even take 65% as good, although I'd prefer 80%, but whatever it's going to be, 65%, 80%, somewhere between or somewhere more. Or what if they're better? What if they're 120%, 160% better? That person is focusing on that all the time. As a founder, that doesn't happen. I get to it when I get to it. And decisions get delayed or they just don't get made and opportunities are lost. And so as a company, yeah, it might be in the books, it's in the profits a step or two back to make 10 or 15 steps forward. And let me take it a step forward. Maybe you have no plans to sell, and that's fine. The best practices, though, are best practices. If you were to sell the company, if you were to get investment in, let's just use a round number, every dollar of profit is worth $10 to you. And sure, maybe it's only 5 or 6, or maybe it could be 20, or maybe more than that. And whoever you're bringing in can help 5x or 10x the profits. Why wouldn't you do it? As we're talking about this, I'm thinking of a guest who came on the Deep Wealth podcast. He said, Jeffrey, the biggest problem that I see with founders when I'm speaking with them, and these are his words, not mine, so many founders are focused on how can I make something 5 or 10% better? Maybe the question is, well, maybe I'm not 5 or 10% better. Maybe I'm even worse in that area because I'm 20xing the business overall. And isn't that where we really all want to be? So fire ourselves and don't make a bet the farm decision. Do an experiment. And if it blows up, it doesn't work, the wrong person was hired, great. You're that much closer to knowing who I'm going to look for, what I should be doing, and how I'm going to be hiring the next person who can take the company to the next level. And if that doesn't work out, okay, well, there can only be so many mishires that I do until I get the right person. I'm now that much closer. It's like when in the early days I was doing the sales all on my own. Every hang up that I got, I said, yes, I got a hang up. And Waleska was like, well, Jeffrey, why are you so excited? They just hung up on you. They didn't even say no, they just hung up. I said, Waleska, every hang up I get, I'm that much closer to getting the yes. So here we go. This next phone call could be it. It's the same thing when I'm firing myself. This next hire could be the hire that marks the change for myself and the company. And to that listener, to that founder, what if you have an incredibly successful business? It's profitable, it's scaling, and you're spending 5 hours a month, 10 hours a month, because you choose to. Not because you have to, because you want to. And because you have this incredible team and that you're spending your time the way that you want to spend your time. Is that worth some experimentation and trying some things out and some investment to get there? In my books, for sure, it would be, why not?
So, okay, so we've got abdicate, delegate, or eliminate. That was one. Always keep your finger on the cash. Like that's number 2. Give us one more quick takeaway for someone who's listening, who's like, I'm in a small business, I got to move it forward. Third big takeaway would be what?
It was all about the team. I'm going to throw 2 out there. They're kind of one and the same, not really, but very quickly. It's all about the team. The success, the 9-figure exit, I had 2 incredible business partners. I also had this incredible team. It was not me. And it was having the right team around me. There was a point in the journey where I welcomed God back into my life. That made a huge difference for me as well in terms of the clarity and knowing what to do, what not to do. So have the right team around you. And the right team, it could just be one other person. We're not talking you have to be a gazillion person company. Okay, my team is myself and this other person for now. Great. We're going to make the most of it. And with the right team, we embed it into the culture. Let's have 6 months of cash in the bank. We're losing money on that. We're not investing in that. It's just getting interest, whatever the interest rate is, because I want that peace of mind at night that, heaven forbid, I lose a customer or something happens. We're not closing up shop. We have enough cash in the bank to keep us through some of the tough times, to give us that breathing room that you just never know for that rainy day.
During that period where you were growing and you knew this was a real thing, did you have any experience with your team where someone or multiple people had all the talent in the world, were terrific at their job, but they didn't fit from a value perspective, and you had to make tough decisions around that? And the reason I bring that up, again, not to be personal, John and I just went through a great exit. We tried another opportunity where we brought someone over from that exit who just didn't fit with our values, and we crashed and burned so fast. It was shocking how the lack of the value alignment that literally destroyed a company in a matter of weeks, that had all the promise in the world, and it destroyed it. So did you have that experience?
Sadly, Anthony, the answer is yes, not once, but many a times, and even at the most senior of levels where, okay, this is the person, and the red flags were there, I refused to see them. Because in my mind, it has to work. This has got to be the person. I'm too tired to go out and find somebody else. I don't like what I'm seeing. And it blew up in really all the instances at the worst possible time because I didn't listen to my intuition or to my gut or to what others were saying, and I didn't see the writing that was on the wall. And so finding someone that fits the culture and the beliefs, is not saying that, hey, we've got to be best friends or they need to be exactly like I am. We can agree to disagree, but the values. And what are your values? For the listeners listening, what are the values? As an example, the values at EmbaNet, okay, we never give up. We always find a way around, through, over, under. We transform impossible into I'm possible. Don't know how we're going to do it, but we will figure it out and find a way. And when we had people that didn't have those values, that's when the pressure came on. They would quit or they'd make the wrong decisions and they would leave us high and dry, and the company paid a heavy, heavy price for that a number of times when that happened. And so having the right team and the right culture is absolutely essential. And having learned from that, although sometimes looking back I didn't, because that happened, I'd hire someone else and they weren't a cultural fit. Jeffrey, what's going on? You made the same mistake again. Having said that though, having the courage for me now to say no, yeah, this person is a rock star in every way. They're not a fit for this company though, because the values aren't there. Sure, they can make the company a lot of money, they can make a difference. I'm going to say no because I don't see a good ending here because the values are different.
They're way more than a poster on the wall. You have to live, you have to really live your values. And my advice to young entrepreneurs is create your values. Don't tell anybody about them. Live them for a year, and then make sure you have a team around you that automatically live those values. You create the culture by demonstrating your commitment to those values. They don't have to be spoken; they have to be lived. And as I'm talking to younger guys in this business, and even some guys that are in similar positions that I was in my old industry, yeah, they have quote unquote a mission statement and a value poster on the wall. They're not really living it. They're not, and they're metric based. They're not action based. So that would be my personal advice. Having spent 39 years in corporate America, where every year we'd go on a retreat to create our mission statement and our values, slap them on the wall. And the first one was always the customer comes first, or some version of that. And not a single action in those Fortune 100 companies was revolved around the customer. It was all about EPS. How do you do 10% more with 10% less? And total waste of time. So really, it's really an important thing, and it's subjective and it's not metric based, but it's absolutely necessary to building a successful company. More important than growing revenue, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking about that, Anthony, I'm just thinking back, and really it's me asking the question, are my actions speaking louder than my words? Because we can say a lot of things, but talk is cheap. And so if you looked at just my actions, am I exemplifying what I want to see in other people? So true.
When
best.
Yeah, you talk of one of your, I think if I might have this right, that growth is a mistake. What's the financial metric that's most important to creating value in the company, whether you're thinking about an exit or otherwise? What's the one thing that people maybe aren't focused on? Is EBITDA a thing of the past? Is it free cash flow? What's your take on that?
Wow, what a great question. My goodness, we can go down so many different avenues with that. From a high level perspective, with what I'm about to say, let me preface it by saying that at one point in time, we need to make sure that what we're doing is understood by the rest of the world. So if we're going to have investors come in, or the next generation, or a buyer, EBITDA is very much alive and well, and it exists, and this is how companies are going to be valued. So we have to make sure that it's there. But two things that play into that is, again, for me, it's going back to the 9-step roadmap that we created for ourselves. And back in the day, it wasn't even 9 steps. Our biggest failures filled out some of the 9 steps. It's going back to step 1, big picture. Are we solving a painful of enough problem that people are more than happy to pay us for that. Write us a check, take money out of their pocket to pay us for that, to make that pain go away. That's really question number one. And if the answer is, well, no, or another Me Too company, or it's okay now, but another month or two will become obsolete, not great. Not great at all. And we're talking earlier about AI, and that's a great example of it. Better be a incredibly big, complicated, painful problem that we are world-class at solving to make a difference. And then once you've got that figured out, the next metric for me, then this was everything, and I ignored everyone else's advice, maybe for better, maybe for worse, and it's, are we profitable? And I'm not talking gross profits. So many founders, to me, in my books, make the mistake, oh, Jeffrey, look at this, our growth was up 50%. And so, well, that's great, but what were your profits? And they start talking gross profits, and I say, no. What, net profits? So after you paid all your expenses, your taxes, everything else, how much money was left? And so as an example, let me exaggerate this. Hey, we had growth, it was up 100%, we got to $10 million in revenue. Okay, amazing. What did you have left end of the day? What were your profits? Oh, actually, we lost $2 million. Okay, so all those numbers, they mean nothing. So for me, it's going back again to the basics. What's the problem that we're solving, and are we creating a moat around ourselves that is difficult for others to come in and duplicate what we're doing in solving that painful problem? And then what's the net profit? And as an example, to put my money literally where my mouth is, pun intended, back in the EmbaNet days and with all my other companies, but in EmbaNet in particular, every dollar of revenue that we brought in, net profit was 53 cents. So think about that. I was keeping 53 cents of every dollar. And that's why my top line was much smaller than my competitors. But we were the king of kings when it came to profits in the industry, because my competitors were so far behind. Sure, they were outspending us, and they had the burn rate, and they had the revenue and everything else, but they were missing the profits. And end of the day, that's what really made a difference. And there may be times, Anthony, where, okay, it's out of fashion. Profits don't matter so much, but it always comes back to first principles, and profits do make a difference, and stay in for the long haul.
Great, thanks.
That's it, man. Cash flow, cash is king, and that's the mic drop moment. Like, if you're in business and you're making money, there you are. And if you're in business and you're not making money, you're maybe in it unintentionally the nonprofit. Jeffrey, amazing. We're going to have to bring you back. I think we want to hear more about this system and how you assess a company when you go in, and how you can tell right away what changes to make. But this has been a fantastic conversation. We're gonna have our team bring you back very shortly to follow up and ask. I think each one of us probably had 10 more questions without even thinking about it. And maybe it might have been closer to 100. So thank you very much for being here. Tales of Abundance. The listeners, you know what to do. Randy, you want to tell them where to find us?
talesofabundance.com, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, doesn't matter. Wherever they get podcasts. Download.
It doesn't change. It doesn't change. We're gonna put show notes together so you know where to find Jeffrey. Jeffrey, if somebody wants to find you, where do they find you?
Send me a good old-fashioned email, success@deepwealth.com, success at deepwealth, deepwealth.com, success@deepwealth.com. That'll personally get to me, and would be delighted to answer any questions.
We'll put you in the show notes as well. Thanks for being here. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Take care, and God bless.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Click follow for more content like this, or go to talesofabundance.com to join our community and get free tools.